Today's marijuana provides more than a big buzz. It is a big business. The $38 billion cannabis industry has made some people very rich and many people quite high. But it could also be leading some people to their deaths. Tonight, a neuroscientist from Vanderbilt University is speaking out with cautionary words about what many believe is a harmless drug. More than 25% of young people now say they use it. And according to her, they're the ones at highest risk. Dr. Kristen Gilliland is by any measure an expert on the human brain. She has a PhD in organic chemistry. She taught neurochemistry at the prestigious California Polytechnic University. That's the study of drugs and chemicals on the nervous system. But Dr. Gilliland is also a mother, and none of that rigorous academic training could help when she got the tragic news about her own son, Anders. She remembers that dark day in the documentary, Speaking Through Me.
On March 5th, 2019, the police came to my work in the afternoon to tell me that my baby boy, Anders Meisenheimer, had died from an overdose. At that moment, I knew my life was changed forever.
Anders was 22 years old when he died from an accidental overdose. The heartbreaking finality for Kristen and her husband, who had been trying for years to help their son deal with his substance abuse problems. She says Anders began with marijuana when he was just 14 years old. He told her it helped him calm his anxiety, but it actually began to make things worse. He began hearing voices, Kristen says, and would be up sometimes for days at a time.
He was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. The diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder basically meant that Anders suffered from schizophrenia, which explained him hearing voices, but it was in combination with bipolar disorder. At the time, I did not realize that his mental illness could have been brought on by his frequent weed smoking.
After losing Anders, Kristen began studying the effects of marijuana on the developing adolescent brain. She says Anders suffered from cannabis-induced psychosis. It began with his marijuana use, she says, and then it triggered the schizophrenia that then led to his addiction to other substances, she says, ultimately ending in a heroin overdose. Kristen is now honoring her son's memory. She's devoting her life's work to helping other young people deal with the stresses of growing up in a safe and healthy way. She's a frequent speaker on the adolescent drug use circuit and is an assistant professor of research for the Warren Center at Vanderbilt University. Dr. Kristen Gilliland joins me now. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
A lot of people think marijuana is nothing. It's legal in half the country for recreational use. I smell it everywhere I go in most places in the country. But the marijuana that people are smoking or ingesting today is very, very different from the pot that people were smoking or ingesting when you and I were growing up. It was 2 or 3% THC then. Today's THC levels are as high as 90%.
Yeah, so what we're seeing is in the actual concentrates that are available, those can be up as high as 90%. In the cannabis flower, the actual THC content can be between 10 to 30%. We're seeing, as high as 30%. But a lot of these vape pens that these kids are using can be 50% THC. So that THC, the psychoactive ingredient that gives the high feeling, is nowhere near to what we had when we were kids.
More and more hospitals are now reporting seeing cases of marijuana-induced psychosis. What is this?
So it's loss of contact with reality. And it might be hearing voices, extreme paranoia. Like with my son, he felt like he was being watched. The CIA was following him. They might feel the government is out to get them. Or maybe just looking at something, the way cars are parked is telling them that something's going to happen. And it's just a complete loss of contact with reality.
And young men in particular are at risk of this?
So young men, I would say maybe now there's maybe more younger women who are using cannabis or smoking weed, but a lot more of, I would say, boys are drawn to it more. So we might see that. But there is a study that showed that it was out of Denmark, that in the cases of schizophrenia, that 1 in 5 young males would have avoided developing schizophrenia had they never developed cannabis use disorder.
You say if your son had never started smoking pot, he might still be here. Do you really believe that?
What I believe is, I believe that there's an association between cannabis and psychosis. I'm not going to say it's causal, but I'm going to say there's an association. And I do believe that it led, and maybe he had some genetic predisposition to psychosis, some type of long-term psychotic disorder. But what happened was that after he developed that, he didn't like the way the medication made him feel, the antipsychotics, and then he started using heavier substances, which eventually led to his death. And we're seeing more and more of those substances that are tainted with fentanyl and other illicit drugs.
Yeah, but I know that he has a twin brother, Jonas, and
Right.
he also struggled with this.
Yes, and so he struggles as well. And so this is where I do believe that there is some type of genetic predisposition. And this is the problem, that most people think that it's a benign substance and it's not going to cause harm. But I'm here to tell you that if you have youth, their brain is developing and is very vulnerable to the effects of substances like THC. And that system that oversees it is responsible for cognition, for motivation and reward, for emotion regulation, for stress, control of stress, and all of these things. So when THC enters into the system, it hijacks all that, and it makes it more difficult for that brain to develop.
You know all this about the brain, and yet your immense knowledge and expertise could not match Anders' struggles. It's a very moving moment in this documentary when you talk about that call that you got, that he was gone, and how you knew in that instant. I don't even know how you knew in that instant you would survive it.
I think of having a child that is suffering from addiction, or anybody who lives with someone who is suffering from addiction. It is your heart. It's every single waking moment. You are worried about getting that call. And I will say, the minute I saw the police, I knew that that's what they were here for. And I did everything in my power, everything I could to try and help him. And so now I want to help others. This is if I can help one family, if I can help one child just to not experience what I experienced, that's what I'm doing with my life.
Well, Dr. Kristen Gilliland, the documentary is called Speaking Through Me. You've also done TED Talks. Folks can find that on YouTube. I encourage you to do so. It's really important. You might not have been able to save Anders, but you might be able to save somebody else's son. So thank you for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.